Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Get the Shot frontman Jean-Philippe Lagacé to the podcast. Get the Shot's new record, Merciless Destruction, is out today on New Damage Records. If you like beatdown hardcore, this is a record to check out. Jean-Philippe talks about chasing a feeling that kept him in the hardcore scene, his philosophy on writing lyrics, touring in Europe versus the States, and more. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to sign up for the As the Story Grows mailing list. It is the best and easiest way to keep up with what's happening with the podcast each week. You can join us on Discord. It's a small community, but I'd love to see it grow and thrive. We're also on Patreon. I'm doing a better job at getting episodes to Patreon members early, so if you want early access to the podcast, After Dark, the special Patreon members only podcast, maybe a sticker package from me, join us. Links for all of those are in the show notes and at asthestorygrows.com. Enjoy today's chat with Jean-Philippe of Get the Shot. What I like about the new record, I think when it was sent to me, the single, I said, I'm just waiting for somebody to yell, "Get in the fucking pit," right? Like,
yes.
Like, yes. Like, yeah.
That's what, that's the reason why it was created, right?
Yeah. I was like, I know exactly what this band is and I love it. So it's great. So it's awesome. How are things up where you are?
Doing great, man. Doing great. I mean, we have a lot of shows coming. We're playing Furnace Fest this weekend, so it's gonna be nice. And then we're heading back to Europe for a tour with Lion Art and Terror. So it's gonna be nice.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Are you still are you up in Canada still, or where?
Yeah. In Canada, in Quebec City.
Yeah. Are you flying down? When are you playing Furnace Fest? Tomorrow or Sunday?
We're Sunday, yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Is there still like a crazy visa process to come down, or is all that like, kind of cleared up since then?
Yeah, it's been horrifying. I mean, we were supposed to play Blue Ridge Fest at the beginning of the month, but we didn't receive our visa in time, so we couldn't get there. So we just received them like this week. So
shit.
We're lucky.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
It sucks so bad to be a non-US citizen when you want to play the US. So.
Right? Yeah. That's awesome. Let's go back. What was growing up like for you?
Growing up, like, I mean, wow. I mean, growing up has been a kind of a weird journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a weird journey. I mean, I'm now in Quebec City, and this is where I met, the guys from Get the Shot, and we've been playing together for like the 13 last years so far. So it's been like a long road. We toured a lot, and we're all people from the same area. So we've been friends for a long time now, and we've been playing music for the last 13 years. I mean, that's what we always done in our lives. I mean, we didn't do anything else. I mean, we're fucking punk rockers, and we're still are even at 35, 36 years old.
Yeah. You weren't like into music or sports or anything before music. It's always music.
Well, I'm into other things. I mean, I'm a philosophy teacher in college.
Oh, nice.
So I love this. I'm a gym rat too. So I love to train and stuff. I've been doing martial art all my life too. Oh, nice. So I mean, we have other interests, but I mean, music is like the center of our lives.
Yeah. What got you into music?
Man, I mean, I grew up in a family with a lot of musicians. So at an early age, I learned how to sing, how to play guitar, how to play piano. So I started doing music at the age of 3. So, and I had my first real punk band like at 13 years old.
Oh wow!
So music has been all my life. So this is like the reason why I fucking live, and I'm still here today. If I hadn't had music, I probably wouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah. What got you into like punk?
that's a funny thing, because when I grew up as a teenager, I was like probably 12 years old. I mean, punk rock was the thing, in the place where in the high school where I went, and there was always like a punk shows because I came from a small city like in the east of Quebec, and when there was a punk show, it was like the big happening where all the kids from the city went to. So every punk rock show was like a fucking huge event. And the first time I went to a punk show, the first thing I felt was fear. I was afraid during the whole concert. I was like, man, I was seeing people jumping from everywhere, like people getting to the pit, punching each other in the face, and was like, whoa, what is that shit? And I was afraid. And when the show was over and I got home, I was like, damn, I survived this thing. This is awesome, So that kind of fear that I felt, during the show, this is the feeling that I always wanted to get, during a hardcore show. This is what I wanted, to transmit to people. I mean, a good hardcore show is a show where you fear for your life. And that really, really got to me, and I fell in love with this music and I started listening to it. So I grew up in punk rock like every other kids, and then I went into more extreme stuff, more metal stuff like Slayer, Anthrax, Sepultura, stuff like that. So more heavy stuff, and then hardcore also. So that's why I actually went down the road of hardcore.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It sounds like there was a good scene, even though it was small. It was like a really good scene.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome. How did Get the Shot get started?
I mean, I had, previous punk bands and hardcore bands before 2009. And then it was Danny, the bassist of the Get the Shot, who actually sent me an email. He said, we don't know you, but we play some shows together. He had another band too, and we like what you do. So we'd like to start a hardcore band, something like that. So if you want to do this, let's do this. So I said, yeah, why not? I didn't have any news from these guys for a year, and then a year later, they came back to me and said, hey, we wanted to start a band, and I was like, yeah. So we finally decided, to start it in 2009. So. It started like that, man, and it's been 13 years so far. So we had a couple of lineup changes, but the main core of the band is still the same.
That's awesome. Where'd the name come from?
It's actually come from two places. First is Pulp Fiction, the movie, from Quentin Tarantino,
Yeah.
When the girl's laying down on the floor and there's John Travolta saying, oh, get the shot, give her the fucking shot, because she's so wasted. She needs something to wake her up.
Yeah.
So it came from that. And there was also a song from a band called Attitude, which was a band from Syracuse. That was called Get the Shot, actually. So the name came from that. And that's a funny thing, because, I mean, the name didn't age so well because, of the pandemic and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So sometimes, we receive some hate messages from white wingers saying, oh, you are a fucking government band. No, fuck you, no. No, absolutely not. I mean, we had this band for the last 13 years. So, but it's funny.
That's so funny. I'm a really big fan of the album artwork that you guys have on all your albums. Who does the artwork for you guys?
We have different artists on every record. We have a guy called Vince Genois for our first records, in Perdition and No Peace in Hell. And after that, we have good friends in Quebec City, which is called Alex Goulet, who did Infinite Punishment, the previous album. And for this one, this is a new artist from Ukraine, actually, who did that artwork. He's called Daymorph. So we were absolutely impressed and shocked when we saw the artwork. He's one hell of an artist, and this is probably one of the best artwork I've ever had for an album.
Yeah, it's really dope. There seems to be, through the discography, a lot of lyrical themes, or at least song titles about anti-religion or establishment. Where does that come from?
Well, I think that hardcore has to be something that criticizes the system. You need, hardcore has no meaning if it is not against, dominant thinking in your society. And whether you like it or not, I mean, our societies are very, very religious, even though they call themselves laics. So, criticizing the system is criticizing, all the dominant values, in our times. And I think that's the task of hardcore, to still be critic, but also, to propose a different way of living, propose a different kind of living, a different way of seeing the world, maybe a more inclusive way of seeing the world too. So, and I mean, there's no extreme music, if there's no angst, if there's no hate, if there's no angriness, behind the song. So you have to stand against something. You don't have to be necessarily political. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to be fucking pissed, You have to have something inside of you that just want to get out. And that means spitting on the rest of the world, because unfortunately we live in a sad fucking place.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if like any of your lyrical themes are just like part of that like metal trope of just like evil and Satan, like just
yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up with Slayer, I grew up with Slayer, so I mean, I always remember, Tom Araya speaking about, the God Hates Us All album, and there was this journalist, who asked him, are you Satanist? Why choose a title like that? It was like, oh no, I'm Christian, but God Hates Us All. It sounds fucking badass, don't you think? And I'm like, this is part of metal,
right.
Adding that kind of iconography, this kind of themes, and these kind of concept, and there is really something cathartic, behind these kind of themes.
How'd you guys end up with New Damage?
It's been like a couple of years ago. Actually, like we worked with them on our previous records, Infinite Punishment in 2017. So they've been with us for the last 5 years, and we don't have actually a lot of metal label. And in Canada, New Damage, I think, are the only exception to the rule.
Yeah.
So we were really stoked to work with them, and they're doing a great job for us here.
The album is called Divination of Doom. I'm curious what the process for writing and recording was like, given that you probably worked on it either before or during the pandemic.
Yeah, man. Honestly, it was a pain in the ass. Everything about this recording process was painful and awful. Because of the pandemic, like you said, it's been so hard, to record things. We had, to choose different studios, because some studios closed during the pandemic, and we have to go to another place to record, the other instruments, and then record the vocals at another place. So at the end, we had to put everything together and give it, to the producer who's gonna mix it. So it's been very long and very complicated. So it was time that that this fucking record ends. It was hard. It was very, very hard. But we managed to do it. But yes, it was one hell of a challenge, I must admit it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Where'd the title for the record come from?
Well, actually, this, the most of our record, talk about the notion, of perdition. Our first record in 2012 was Perdition. The second one was No Peace in Hell. Where after the fall, you lay in hell. Infinite Punishment was the punishment, that you've been inflicted in hell. And Merciless Destruction is like the question of nothingness. When the war is over, what's left, and there's nothing left, there's just destruction everywhere. This is the most hopeless record we've ever wrote so far. So this is it. The whole record is built around the concept of a movie that I love so much, which is called Hellraiser by Clive Barker, a horror movie. And there's a lot of quotes from this movie during the whole record. And, I mean, Merciless Destruction, defines, the state of the world we live in right now. I mean, when there is no hope left, what can you do? How can you live a good life in a world that is fundamentally bad? How can you do this? So this is the kind of question, that actually, nourished the concept of this record.
Yeah. I was wondering if like the pandemic in any ways and just like isolation kind of fed into the themes of like hopelessness.
Yeah, totally. And I still believe that the best thing that could happen to human race is extinction. I mean, we should be fucking extinct. I mean, we managed, to destroy everything that this world gave to us. So somehow, it would be a benefit to the world that the human race disappear. And I still believe it. And so the question now is, what do we do? In the current state of the world, what do we do? How can we act morally in a world that is vicious, in a world that is dangerous, in a world that actually works for its own destruction? That's a big question. I think that's the question that this record tries to answer.
Yeah. I know here in the States, along with the pandemic and isolation, there was so much like infighting between people about what to do, what was right, and then like Black Lives Matter's protest and all the election bullshit that happened here. Like, what was the state of things up in Canada? Where things like, was it still this tension of just like, right and left?
Well, for the pandemic, it's probably the same as anywhere else in the world. There were people, were for the measures that was put in place by the government. Some others were against it. There were good measures. There was bad one too. So yeah, it was a conflict. A very conflictual time, but somehow what I see now in Canada, because in Quebec right now we have elections right now in Quebec, and what I see is that everything that happened in politics in the United States is slowly coming to Quebec and Canada. The model of doing politics in the United States slowly is coming to Quebec and Canada. We never had, in Quebec, these very deep ideological, conflicts. There's always been some people from the left and from the right, but somehow, these ideological tensions really exacerbated in the last few years. And we have, like the United States, we have a far more decomplexed far right who's actually rising here in Quebec. Some far right activists who are actually acting violent, and we have as a community, to get together, to stop, some people, to normalize a kind of discourse that would be not acceptable, in the public sphere. So So it's very weird, and actually, I find it hard, to find the current state peaceful. There is more violence than ever. There's more like post-factual realities than ever. The rational debate is actually not present anymore in the public sphere. Yeah. It's all about my opinions and my beliefs. We can't agree on just scientific facts. So it's a weird and dangerous time, I think, that we live in, and that's why we have to stay critical. We have to still to cultivate that critical thinking that is a necessity in our times.
Yeah. I was on a message board yesterday talking about Star Wars, and it erupted into people just being assholes to each other, and I'm like,
that's crazy.
We're talking about movies.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. That's totally crazy. Yeah.
It's wild. Well, you guys are playing Furnace Fest, and then you're heading to the UK. Does that wrap up your plans for the rest of this year, and you're looking ahead to 2023, or what's in the future for you guys?
Yeah, so we're playing Furnace Fest this Sunday. We're going to Europe, all over Europe, with Lionheart, Terror, and Dying Wish in October. Then after that, we're going to do a couple of shows here in Canada, to launch the new record. Then after that, we'll be doing a headlining tour in Europe in March. Nice. So to go to really have the time to play a lot of songs, because strangely, when you play at festivals or when you're on a tour with bigger bands, you don't have a lot of time playing. thing. So you have to choose carefully the songs that you play. So we don't have a lot of time, to play a lot of new songs. But when you do a headlining tour, you have more time, you have more places to put new songs in your set. So that's what's going to look like. And like every summer we're doing also festivals in Europe. So we'll see. There's a lot of things coming, and we're gonna be a lot more in the US in 2023, that's for sure. We had a lot of offers. We're working with good people here in the US, so it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun, and I'm stoked to finally be able to tour the US.
Yeah, is it easier to book tours over in Europe and find a fan base over there?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, the first obstacle is of course the visas. I mean, the visas are expensive to go to the US, so you have to get that, and sometimes it takes a long time, like I said earlier. And second thing, I think that in Europe the difference is, I think I love the US, but I think most people in the US really love US bands. If you're a band from elsewhere, you have to be fucking good, to impress people there. And I can totally understand. You guys in the US have a lot of fucking awesome bands, and actually hardcore, was born in the US. So, it's okay. But that means that a lot of Americans, sometimes, love US bands. Mm-hmm. And when there are bands from Europe and Canada, you have to work a little bit more, to get a little bit of attention in the US. So I think it's totally normal. It's a cultural fact. But once you get there, people are fucking nice and people are kind. So it's really, really fun. So that's why we're starting, slowly to get to the US, but it took a lot of time. In Europe, the difference is that when you go to Europe, you're considered like an American band, because even though you're coming from Canada, you're coming from America, So there's like this positive, prejudice towards you, that make you feel like, oh, there are like a band from elsewhere. They must be good. They must be big. And, people are very, very, very open-minded in some of these countries. So, yes, it's easier to build, a big fan base. And of course, Europe is fucking big. There's a lot of people. Yeah. There's a lot of different countries, in a small space. So, of course, the market is bigger. So you have more different places to see, different people to meet. So, and then you don't need visas to play there. So it's definitely easier to go there, and the touring conditions are different too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why also there's a lot of American bands who actually fly to Europe to tour there and don't actually tour a lot in the US. So this is a pretty. I could say the same thing about Canada actually, because Canada is a very fucking boring place, every time we've toured Canada, it's been awful. It's been awful. It's such a big country, and there's not a lot of cool cities to play hardcore or metal. So, and there's not a lot of people, in the shows. So it's way too big for what you can accomplish and what you can do there. In Europe, there's like a lot of big cities, in a small space, so you don't have to travel way too far to play music. So it's different context. And in North America, I think there is, this coldness that is different than in the rest of the world. This is, and we are like that too. In Quebec, and it's the same thing. And that's why, the context is different. And I think the way of approaching bands is different too. But that's why I'm stoked to finally play Furnace Fest this weekend and finally, kick the door, enter the US and say, hi friends, we're there.
Yeah, it seems like in talking to a lot of European bands over the last 2 years, it seems like European metal fans in Europe just like heavy music, and it doesn't matter whether it's power metal or black metal. It's just like, we like heavy music, and it can all be in the same place. Where
exactly, you can have beatdown. I know in the
States, it's like, we only like hardcore, we only like metal, or we only like death metal. It's like, it's all heavy. Who cares? Like, put it on the same bill. Mosh all the same.
Yeah, that's that kind of open-mindedness that I was talking about. The people don't care. Like I said, it's heavy. Oh, it's good. If you play well, people will treat you well too. So that's what it's all about in Europe.
What has what's been getting you through life lately? Music, books, movies, TV. Like, what have you been enjoying?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love it. I mean, of course, music. I mean, creating music has always been like the main part of my life. So of course, I need this. I'm a philosophy teacher, like I said. So I mean, I'm reading a lot of books too. Always, trying, to understand this fucking place we live in, even though it's ugly. I try to understand it. And I'm also I'm a gym rat, so I'm always training. My life is like that kind of very rigid discipline. Where I teach, I train, I play music, and I mean I repeat that. I've been repeating that for the last 10 years. So I mean that kind of routine, that kind of way of life, it's actually what grounds me and what makes me alive still to this day.